A woman had emailed me several times describing her angst, pretty much panic actually, about taking a trip out of the country and having all the documents right for a visa application and subsequent visa interview with the immigration people. Kind of understandable, since immigration people are a little on the, rigid side. She was worried that she wouldn't get her visa on time, and she just fussed and carried on, and what if this, and what if, and blah, blah, but just never stopped. I kept repeating, you have your documentation, it's enough. Relax. You've done everything you can do. After that, the decision's kind of out of your hands. But she kept fussing, and she sent in her application, and as opposed to her worry, which was that her interview for the visa wouldn't happen for another 2 months, which would be too late to make her trip, she got her appointment for the interview in 1 week. A week. Way faster than she had thought possible. Then the interview went perfectly and was over in 5 minutes. I said, there might be a lesson here. All of that time wasted and happiness replaced with fussing. Just lost opportunity to be happy. If you worry and fuss, and the bad thing happens, well, then the bad thing happened and you wasted all the time you could have been happy. And if the bad thing doesn't happen, you still wasted that time. Fussing isn't a step. Worrying is not a step. No, it's just waste. It's distracting. It's foolish. She said, but I had to prepare. Yes, we all have to prepare. You can't just show up at the airport and say, I want to fly to Turkey in 10 minutes. It doesn't work. But preparation isn't what ruined your many days before you got your visa interview. Fear did. Preparation is done without fear. How do you tell the difference between obsessing and preparation? Fear. It's really not more complicated than that. She said, so it wasn't wrong for me to be prepared as I was with all the documents. Too much documentation, it turned out, she said. But that I just needed to prepare fearlessly, right? And with large font and an exclamation mark, I said, yeah, right. Preparation's fine. Preparation's required. Fussing isn't. Fearless preparation is just smart. Fearful preparation is painful and almost always filled with mistakes. When we're afraid, we forget stuff. I couldn't count how many times I have talked to people, very clearly given them instructions or taught them something. I, on the whole, don't mumble, and I'm not vague. Very clearly given them instructions to the point that I can remember the instructions. And boy, if I can remember them later when they weren't for me, then you'd think they could. Oh no. Later on, they don't remember a single word I've said, or they've distorted it into something unrecognizable. Because why? They're deaf? No. Stupid? No. Afraid. Just afraid, which, well, oddly does make you deaf and stupid. It does. You just can't hear. When people are fearless, they don't get lazy. It's not like they don't prepare. They still do. They just don't obsess and fuss and ruin their lives. She continues, but all my life, if I'm not under pressure, I get too relaxed. I put off deadlines. I procrastinate. So I need some pressure and fear, right? Without the fear, things don't get done. Can I be doing it differently? Yeah. You're simply accustomed to being motivated by fear. And it's gotten to the point, because you're so accustomed to it, that it takes more and more fear to motivate you. That's one of the reasons that fear is a very ineffective long-term motivation. If my only goal is to get you to move out of your chair Well, then I'm going to come at you with a gun and tell you to move. You'll move, but I'm not going to motivate you to do anything good long term. You've just gotten accustomed to fear. You don't know anything else. You never got happiness as a reward for working. Listen, for working, you never got happiness. So eventually your little brain, mostly unconsciously, went, well, then why bother? Happiness didn't motivate you, so you used, and other people used on you, fear and panic. And then it took more and more, and boy, you just got accustomed to living in a circus of fear. But soon you're going to change things. As you feel loved, you will do things because you truly want to. Imagine that. Because you just want to be prepared. Donna and I travel fairly often, and Donna starts packing a whole day ahead of time and uses a packing list, and it's carefully prepared. And when we get wherever we're going, we always have everything that we were looking for, that we could use, because she just prepares. She doesn't run around all crazy going, oh, what if I've forgotten something? No, that would just ruin all the days up to the time that we leave. You do things because you want to when you're unafraid, because they add to your happiness, not because you're avoiding getting in trouble or avoiding pain. Whoa, are those motivations different? It's a different way to live. It's more sustainable, while fear eventually just gets old and it doesn't work. And in the process, ruins your life. And that's what you've been describing, and that's what I've seen in you. So you can learn to do this differently. New subject. Here's somebody who writes, obviously works in some medical facility. Today we had a patient in our clinic who has terminal cancer and seemed a bit more emotional than usual. She's on narcotics, so her behaving strangely is not uncommon. Duh. People who have terminal cancer are frankly entitled to all the narcotics they want to take. They're in pain all the time. They know they're going to die. What are they going to do? Get addicted? Yeah, maybe. But the cure for their addiction, and I'm not laughing about dying, the cure for their addiction is coming up pretty soon. So give them something for their pain. And of course, people who are on narcotics behave differently. Yeah. You continue. After all day in the clinic, it was time for her to go home by way of one of our transportation methods, van, taxi, whatever. When her ride came, she was sound asleep, and the van driver said that he wasn't comfortable taking her to her car. And then in parenthesis, I didn't realize that she'd driven herself there. So she was on narcotics, and oh, heaven help us, she drove herself to the clinic. Everybody was afraid to send her home, so they wanted me to make the decision. Well, of course, you're the one in charge, and very likely we're the only one who expressed a willingness to make the decision. Fear breeds fear. So people start off afraid. They wake up in the morning afraid, and then they encounter something unusual, like this lady who appears to be sleeping, well, actually was sleeping, and maybe is impaired by narcotics, who knows, and they're going to send her to her car, and she's going to kill herself, and then her family's going to sue the clinic for negligence. So now they already started off afraid. Now they're really afraid, and it spreads like a fire. Everybody's afraid now. Oh, the transportation person's afraid, and the nurses are afraid, and the bricks in the building are afraid. You continue. The patient had received a mild dose of sedative 6 hours earlier in the clinic, and they were afraid that she'd be driving intoxicated because of this. The dose was tiny, and if you're the charge nurse, you would know what tiny was. And she drives and functions on narcotics all the time. I believe that, since I have, some personal experience having done that, and has for a long time. She was speaking clearly and sensibly. So by most reasonable standards, and especially since you know her, it doesn't sound like there are excessive dangers from drugs here. Long day at the clinic. She's tired. She has terminal cancer. She's exhausted anyway, just from the cancer and the treatment. Narcotics, yeah, she would look somewhat impaired, but she's speaking clearly and sensibly. You continue. So I called the patient's doctor, who said she's fine to go home after I described the whole situation. This is the patient's doctor who actually gets to make the decision, the medical decision. Well, that's pretty good reassurance. So the problem doesn't appear to be the patient. It's the transportation guy afraid to be liable, and the other nurses and other personnel who are afraid of making a mistake. It's his job to get her home after you discharge her, and he's afraid. So what could you do? Well, if you want to give in to the fear, which is okay, you don't always have to do the fearless thing. Call a cab. Cab drivers are bonded. They're obligated. They're responsible to get their customers from point A to point B. She can walk. She can speak. Make sure she doesn't have any narcotics on her so she's not completely stoned in the back seat. The cab driver takes her to her home. She sleeps, and then in the morning, she gets another cab and comes back and gets her car. There's a solution. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying what you should have done. Just there is a solution when we're not afraid. When we're afraid, every solution appears to be impossible, scary. So what does this have to do with love? Because we're talking about taking somebody home who has terminal cancer. If everybody in a situation is not sufficiently loved, all their decisions are from fear. Sometimes people start a story about something and I just go, you're all screwed. Because nobody in the situation is feeling loved. Nobody is present. In fact, the people in the clinic are more intoxicated from fear, pay attention, than the patient is from narcotics. Their decisions are more impaired. They're the ones running around like chickens with their heads cut off, not the patient. Somebody has to make a fearless decision. So it's your job, since you know what it means to feel loved, and because you're the charge nurse, the nurse in charge, it's your job not to be afraid. And love is how you do that, to make a fearless decision. Then, after you feel fearless, you'll make a better medical decision. But trying to make a medical decision while you're afraid, you're kidding. Not possible. I used to work in emergency rooms and run those codes, that you see on television where everybody's running around and they're saying clear and shocking the patient's chest. And it's all really quite exciting. And you learn really quickly the physicians and nurses who are afraid. Because if they are, they're useless, and you throw them out of the room. I did. Go get me somebody who's not afraid. Really. I don't care if their training is less, because they make better decisions. The more serious, the more emergent the situation is, the calmer you have to get. No joke. You continue. The patient had been advised to bring somebody with her, but, well, come on. She's terminal in narcotics. What does she care? But she said she was a tough woman. She probably is. And she was fine. So I told my staff, discharge the patient. From the information I have and from having worked in medical situations a lot of times, you were right in every way. You say, but one of my nursing staff vehemently disagreed with me. No kidding. Somebody in fear disagreed with you and thought that since we had given the mild sedative, as you said, tiny dose, we were responsible. Wrong. And if you're in charge and you have the doctor's opinion, you make the choice. If something were to happen, it would be the doctor's responsibility. No kidding. I've been the doctor in the emergency room on uncounted occasions and the doctor in the operating room. And if somebody on my staff screws up, guess who they sue? Me. because I'm in charge. I'm in charge of what everybody does. Much like, according to the law, if I go in and rob a bank and you're just sitting in the car waiting for me to come back and speed me away, you get charged with robbing a bank too. You say, the nurse turned red in the face and said something nasty to me. Not uncommon when you don't agree with people. And then I was hurt. And that's where you screwed up. Not in your medical judgment, not in your decision, but in being hurt. That's where feeling loved can make you invincible. If you felt loved, you could simply have said, taking her aside so that she's not shamed in front of everybody, and said, I'm in charge. It's my call, along with her doctor. I have noted and registered your disagreement, and your repetition of it will only hurt the patient. By the way, it will hurt you too. Anybody with any brains will understand, if you keep repeating this, I'm going to make note of that too. And I'll be taking that to my supervisors and yours, because it's your call to make. And if she disagrees with you, she can do it quietly. In the military, you can disagree with any commander you want to, but you don't do it in front of other people, ever. And you're in a similar situation. You're the boss. You say, I think this is what we need to do, but if you want to call the physician, do what you think you need to do. Another mistake. And I'm not telling you you were bad, just you already called the patient's doctor. You want to guess how happy the doctor's going to be to hear the same question again from somebody else who's afraid, by the way. And if the person who calls is afraid enough, they're going to make him afraid. Now he's going to change his decision. And now one of you is going to have to take this lady home. This is just getting unreasonable. So you say to the nurse who disagrees with you, only what I just said. It's my call to make. The doctor agrees. We're sending her home. The more words you use, the more defensive you look, and the more hesitant you look. And then victims and fearful people are just ignited by hesitation and fear. And they're going to become more afraid, and you're more screwed. You conclude, I'm hurt, and I'm sure I should not be, but I'm letting the behavior of this nurse get under my skin. Yeah. And you're letting it make you unhappy. So I'm not telling you you shouldn't. Nope, that doesn't help. I'm just showing you a choice. You're allowing this nurse's evaluation of your decision to reflect on your worth as a person, which you've done since you were born. Now you have a chance to do it differently. You've had enough experiences with people loving you unconditionally that you don't need to let this person's opinion affect you. New subject. I know a woman who is doing a real love presentation, which I've done thousands of times, where she's introducing the concept of real love, which is pretty brave, in her hometown. She figured out herself how she was going to do it and where. She took the material from wherever, the website, a book, who cares, found a PowerPoint presentation, and then just decided to do it. That's pretty bold. You want to make a change in the world? Teach people how to feel loved and how to be loving. You can donate to the poor in Tanzania, and I think that's just utterly wonderful. You can contribute to the relief efforts in Haiti or wherever. And if people don't feel more loved, it's going to help really very minimally. I finally asked the question of myself when I was a surgeon for all those years. I help people see better. I help people function better. I occasionally saved lives. But if I save a life of somebody who's miserable and has no prospect of ever being happy, then didn't I just prolong their unhappiness? So I began to wonder, what good am I doing? Not that it's a bad thing to improve somebody's quality of living. No. But are you really improving their quality of living if they're still unloved and unhappy and afraid? You want to change your life? Be a good parent. That'd be the first. You want to change the world? Be a good spouse. Be a happy person. I went to the Department of Motor Vehicles recently to get my license renewed, and Department of Motor Vehicle places are just notable for being grouchy. The whole department's not each person. Long wait. Everybody hates those visits. And I just started chatting people up and talking to the ladies behind the counter. And before long, I had half the department there. And they were just listening to stories and feeling the joy. We can make a difference everywhere we go. So back to this woman. She's going to do this presentation, which is really bold. Dang. Then she began to fuss, which we do when we're afraid, about how she, couldn't memorize it all and would look stupid in front of people. And what if she did it wrong? What if she left something out? What if she forgot something? So she studied it and she worked at it. And she would do trial presentations in front of first the mirror and then in front of one friend and then two friends. And the preparation, oddly, we already talked about this in this chat. There's a difference between preparation and fussing. She did the preparation, and then she thought it might be better if she just did a sprinkling of, fussing on top of it. Actually, a big sprinkling. Kind of a dump, really, of fussing. It was becoming obsessive. And I finally said to her, stop it. Stop preparing. You already know what real love is. You know how it works. You know how it feels. You know what it's done for you. So you know what you need to know for this presentation. You've already got it. You already know 1,000 times more about this subject than anybody you'll be speaking to. No more preparation. You've already done that part. People are coming to learn something about a subject where you are infinitely more knowledgeable than they. So you can't be stupid. And your job is simply to practice being you while you present, not to present perfectly. In fact, the thing that they will see in you the most is whether you are calm, peaceful, powerful, loving. Your words are secondary. If you're not calm and peaceful, it's just going to ruin the experience. You're giving them the gift, really, of pause, you. And if you're afraid you can't give that gift, well, that's just kind of dumb, huh? So be you. She said, I trusted you completely. This is after the presentation. And I didn't look at or practice my talk after you told me to quit it. That's brave. I did the presentation yesterday and just repeated to myself every time I felt the fear come up during the day, this is my gift. Good for you. And then before the talk, made the commitment to focus on connecting with them as opposed to lecturing to them. Clever. My presentation was far from perfect in terms of the fact that, I had to look at my notes every 5 minutes. Baby, if you only looked at your slides every 5 minutes, that's way ahead of the curve. The very first presentation I gave, I was looking at my notes every 60 seconds. You continue. And I talked about slides that I hadn't clicked on yet. Whatever. I've discovered that during a presentation, if I screw up, I don't remember where I am. I just go, hang on a second, my brain is, having a little seizure. I got to check and see if I've been skipping something. And the audience actually respects your authenticity and they pay attention more closely. Crazy, huh? As opposed to this smooth, seamless, silky, greasy presentation that doesn't seem authentic. Nah. You continue, but they were so interested. And I had their attention because my focus was on them. No kidding. And not getting it right, because then the focus would be on you. It turns out the fact that I looked at my notes and was clumsy with slides, in other words, I was imperfect, didn't affect their interest much at all. Shocking. Not really. In fact, when you pause, if you're not afraid, they're riveted. Try it sometime. Anybody who's giving a presentation, you're talking along, just pause intentionally before you say your next word. And the audience, who is listening, most of them, but those who weren't, suddenly go, and they snap their head and look at you because they're going, what? This must be cool. What's next? Because you interrupted the I mean, it'd be like you're driving along and you're hearing the engine and the road sounds, and all of a sudden, silence. Let me tell you, if that ever happens when I'm driving, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to assume I've died. You conclude, I'm so glad I just trusted. I've learned something really important, like a new level of truth and confidence. Yeah, that's what trusting does. Nice work. New subject. Took me a couple of years to notice a problem that my wife, Natalie, and I keep having during conversations. Sometimes we'll be talking and suddenly she gets up, walks to the bathroom, leaving the door open while she brushes her teeth or looks in the mirror or whatever. So I figure she's left the conversation. And because she's left the room, I look at my phone, or I just, lie back on the couch or whatever, waiting for her to come back. But then she asks me a question from the bathroom or another room, and I can't hear her. She finally comes back, and I'm like 2 or 3 sentences behind, and she's annoyed that I'm right there with her. She's annoyed that I'm not right there with her in the conversation. It's very confusing, and she's irritated. It's not fun. No kidding. And I've watched people do this just every day. They might walk into the room, or they just might walk onto another planet in their head. You can see the look in their eyes. Gone. You have to talk about this, because not listening, let's put it another way, the most immediate, powerful, and effective thing that you can do to love somebody else right now is to listen to them. In fact, sometimes it's the most powerful thing you can do, period, not just the most immediate. So not listening is very likely the most immediate thing that you can do to convey to somebody that you don't care about them. So you have to talk about it, and you do it at a time when one of those interrupted and frustrating conversations is not happening. If you do it during one of those times, you've already got a fire going, and you're just going to throw gas on the fire. You have to be clear to her that if she does anything else but stay in the room and look at you, get that last part? She has to be looking at you. If she does anything else, looks away, goes to the other room, goes to the bathroom to brush her teeth, brushes her hair, washes her face with the water running, all things where she can't really have a steady conversation, stands up, turns away, anything, you tell her, I can't read your mind. I can't know what you're doing. I want to pay complete attention to you in the conversation. See, notice you're making it about you, what you want for her. I want to pay complete attention to you when we're talking, and I can't do that when you do that. So I'll either stop the conversation, I'll just detach from it and go to my phone or pick up a book, or we'll come up with something here together that can eliminate that problem, because it's really becoming a problem. Anything that gets between two people on a regular basis, that gets between their intimacy, their closeness, it's got to go, because it's going to get bigger. Because you figure, well, if I can do this, well, then I can do this +1, and then +2, and before long, I hear this phrase, well, we're divorcing, or we're not friends, or what, because we've just grown apart. No, you didn't pay attention to the things that were driving you apart. That's what happened. So, best choice. This is just from experience. I'm not telling you what to do. Best choice I know. She needs to tell you when she's leaving the room. And you just propose that as a possibility. So you know. And first she tells you, the conversation stops until she returns. Nothing. No talking from the bathroom. No, I can hear you. It's okay. No. Even if her ears can hear you, her brain and certainly her heart don't. Second possibility. You come up with a third if you want. I don't care. She doesn't tell you she's leaving, but you tell her that you will pause the conversation until she returns. So she gets up and goes to the bathroom and you yell out, pause. But see, you've already worked out ahead of time that that's what you're going to do. So it's not like a surprise. And if she talks while she's in the other room, you tell her you won't be responsible for that. And all of that is contained in the word pause. Or see you in a minute. Or I'll be here. You come up with your own phrase. Cauliflower. I don't care. Then you go back to the point where you were talking when she was in the room. But you got to come up with a solution because what you're doing clearly isn't working or we wouldn't be having this conversation. No impatience, no irritation. Well, you just leave the room when we're talking. I'm just guessing that's not going to work. It's not a guess, really. It won't. You're coming up with options so that you can hear her better. How could she argue with that? Well, some people can, but it's the best shot you got. No irritation, just clarification and making conversations, which means relationships, work. Easy. New subject. I have a new role at work, and one of my colleagues sometimes teaches me new things. But he gets dramatic when I don't understand something that he's teaching me. And we've all seen this impatient kind of teacher, the one who starts off with this is really, really simple. This is really simple to understand, which means it isn't, and I'm going to get impatient with you. Or somebody's giving directions and they say, oh, you can't miss it. If somebody tells me that, I'm going to miss it. I'm not even going to hear the rest of what they say. Really, I just shut off my brain and I go look it up on some GPS or whatever else online because they're going to tell me wrong. What they're saying when they say to you, it's so easy, they mean for them, you can't miss it, meaning they don't miss it because they've been there 100 times. That's not part of a useful instruction. So he teaches me new things. He gets dramatic when I don't understand something. He sighs loudly. We've heard this. We all learned this during childhood. How many times have I had to tell you that? I said that to my own children more than once, sadly. He sighs loudly. He rolls his eyes. He puts his face in his hands. So this guy's a bit of a drama queen, too. This is really a carnival. And he collapses with his whole body to show me how difficult it is for him. And we've all seen this, where somebody just goes, ugh, and their head drops and their shoulders fold in. The message is unmistakable. You are such a moron. I can't believe it. And everybody in the room pretty much gets that message. And if you were to tell him, you're treating me like a moron. Oh, well, no. You say, I continue asking and ignore his behavior, but by the end of the conversation, I find myself less than peaceful. Yeah, you think? I mean, if somebody just keeps hitting me with a tennis racket, I can put my arms up and I probably won't be fatally injured, and very unlikely that with a tennis racket, unless it's swung really hard, I'm going to break a bone. But it would get kind of exhausting. Same thing with this emotional beating that you're getting from him, because it's an emotional beating. You say, I don't enjoy this. What's wrong with you? And I would like to learn a way to stop the conversation when he gets like this. At the same time, I still want to learn, and he knows stuff that I need to know. I'm not sure how to approach this. What would you do? Well, I'm going to kind of do a mixture of maybe what I would do and maybe what you could do, and you can turn it into whatever you want. You could take your colleague aside at a time when nothing else is going on, not during one of these little tirades, these little temper tantrums, actually. Or you set an appointment to talk to him. And you tell him this calmly, in pretty much the tone of voice I'm using now. So listen to the tone. Fred, I think you know a great deal about a lot of things. And you know a great deal about a lot of things I need to know. For that, I'm grateful. It would help me a lot if you could hear a couple of things that I would like to suggest. First, you didn't always know what you know now. It took time and effort, and I congratulate you for learning these things. But you talk to me like you've always known this stuff, and everybody's always known this stuff, and that's just not true. Once you knew as little as I do, and somebody had to teach you, like you're teaching me. Second, I would be grateful if you'd help me learn what you know, but without any of the eye rolling, the gestures, the posture changes, and all that stuff when you're obviously annoyed or sometimes just making fun of me. Would you be willing to try that? End quote. Just try it. You have nothing to lose. I mean, the way it is now is about as bad as it gets, short of him punching you in the head, which is probably not going to happen at work. You can't keep going like this, or you're going to hate your job. Or you have to find somebody else who can teach you, because this would be just exhausting. You'd get to where you dread going to work. If it doesn't work, if he keeps doing this, got to be a change. So you go see your supervisor and you make a request that you get somebody else. Or if this guy's the only person who knows that the supervisor talk to this guy. Just bypass your colleague, which is not ordinarily the best thing to do. But that's what supervisors are for, is so that you've got some place to go when you can't work things out yourself. You try first yourself and then you go up. If you can't work things out with your teacher, you go to the principal. In the military, if you can't work things out with your lieutenant, then you go to the captain. It's all set up that way so that there is a way to get the thing done. Notice that as you talk to him, you're actually praising him for knowing things, and you're grateful, and asking him to be tolerant of you while you learn. If that doesn't work, up you go in the organizational structure. Not complicated, but with no drama. You don't go to your supervisor crying. You just get what you need to get in order to do your job. And that's what you emphasize to the supervisor and to this colleague. I'm trying to do my job better. I'm not asking for this for some selfish reason. I'm not trying to modify a person. I just can't hear it delivered this way. You got the picture. New subject. I know a woman, Helena, has been practicing real love for a couple of years and really living what she's learned. It's remarkable, actually. Her husband has been minimally involved. Like, he likes it that she's loving, but he's not interested in the words real love at all. Not interested in the word learning or growing. And he wrote to me. He said, the other day, Helena told me that I had been dismissive toward her. My initial feeling was that she was overreacting and being too sensitive. However, I know that I have not given her enough reason to believe that I truly care about her and love her. So even if she is being overly sensitive, it's no wonder. Wow. Bit of truth telling from a guy who's really not involved in this process. Notice, and I'm speaking to him now, you didn't like the word dismissive because you said your initial feeling was she was overreacting. Because there's almost no way to hear that in a positive way, at least in your experience and from your past. But if you haven't given her a reason to feel cared about, the positive thing, another way to say that is that you have dismissed her need to feel loved. So she would be right in saying that you were dismissive. You see? She's not off at all. If you've dismissed her need to feel loved in whatever fashion, like even asking her, how would you best hear this? Well, then you're dismissive. You continue. Lately, I have focused almost entirely on what makes us different, she and I, and how she's lacking in some ways because of our differences. Operating under this lurking assumption, nice phrase, I feel has been killing our relationship. Yeah, I can raise my hand and attest to that because I've been hearing the other side of it from her. You continue. I'm trying to flip that and instead focus on how our differences actually make our relationship better. Every day, I hear some member of a relationship tell me how they're having problems with their partner every day. Most of the time, their problems are due to the fact that they're trying to get their partner to be like what? Them. That's what they're doing. Understandable. We think our way is right because, not because it's in a book, not because it's been proven to be right, but because that's the way we've always done it. And we believe that if other people did things our way, life would be easier. It would be simpler in some ways, but not necessarily easier, and certainly not happier. You continue. I have a strong tendency to want to be right. I have noticed that. You say, I often let getting the facts right get in the way of seeing Elena clearly. I miss the underlying unsaid emotional message that Elena is trying to communicate to me because I'm busy being right. I've come to the realization that my ego and pride are really not that important, especially when compared to having a happy family life. This is pretty close to a miracle for those of you who are listening. This is a guy who's been pretty stubborn about being right. Now here he is saying, I think my ego and pride might be getting in the way. Yeah, no kidding. But he sees it. The fact is obvious. That he sees the fact is heroic. Memorize this. No task or fact, with the exception of maybe taking a wrong turn and going off a cliff or stopping arterial bleeding, is as important as your relationship with your partner. I'm going to say it again. No task or fact is as important as your relationship with your partner, and in most cases, your relationship with other people too, especially children. If you ever get confused again, I'll give you one example. I know you're a smart guy and you are well-read. Consider the example of Bobby Fischer, who played chess, possibly better than any of us will ever do anything. Very possibly, according to at least half the experts in the world, was the best chess player who's ever lived. He's brilliant. He got the facts right. He prepared for one chess match with an opponent by memorizing 17,000 of his opponent's moves consecutively. He could tell you exactly in which game and which date and where the place was and what the 15th move was. That kind of makes me feel stupid. So he got the facts right in that he played chess with a genius beyond describing, but his life was an unqualified disaster on every imaginable level. He was alone, miserable, utterly incapable of relationships with any other human being. Pretty good lesson. He got the details right. He did the task well. He got the facts right. But his life could hardly have been described as right. And you're learning that, which is very cool. Puts you in a really small class of people. New subject. I have a temporary coworker that is roughly my age, and has the same number of years of experience as I do, but has far more schooling and a higher title than I do. It has been my responsibility to orient her to our work setting, and after 3 full weeks, she constantly says, I just don't feel comfortable. I'm mad that they assigned me here. I'm just not comfortable yet. The things she claims to be uncomfortable with are normal everyday tasks of our profession. And I've given her typed and printed step-by-step guides on how to carry out almost every task imaginable. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to be patient and understanding. She's a nice person, but I'm emotionally drained at the end of almost every day. So what do we call somebody like that who just constantly complains about, frankly, anything, but especially I'm not comfortable? She's a victim, huge victim. She's afraid. She is terrified of making mistakes. She's terrified with the unknown. Even though she's roughly your same age, she's been put in a new setting and it scares her. So she wants you to take responsibility for her happiness. That's why she tells you, I'm uncomfortable. The rest of it is, and it's your job to make me comfortable. And apparently that's worked for her in the past, to say that to people, or she wouldn't be doing it. We tend not to do any behavior that hasn't paid off for us at some point in the past, usually consistently. So what do? You could tell her something like this. Possibility. I'm doing the best I can to make your transition to this position as easy as possible. But the transition from one job to another is always unsettling. And another word for that is temporarily uncomfortable. It's unavoidable. You will find, this is still you speaking to her, that repeatedly saying that it's uncomfortable will only make you feel worse. It will just heighten your fear, and then you'll hear less and adjust more slowly, if at all. And it gives you an excuse just not to do the job. Being comfortable comes from trusting that you can learn this, and from trusting people to teach you, and from experience and confidence. That all takes time and work. You can do this. I will help you. I will also point out when you say, I'm not comfortable, or when you're resistant, because at that point, you're not hearing anything I'm telling you. Notice how calmly I'm saying this. This is the tone with which you say it to her. If you act exasperated, I'm so sick of you saying I'm uncomfortable. Well, she's going to be really uncomfortable now. You can do this, you tell her. I'm going to help you. I will have this conversation with you every time you say you're uncomfortable because it's hurting you. And it's beginning to affect other people too. There's a possibility. Give it a shot. See what happens. New subject. This person says, I'm really working toward being a better partner with my husband, Christopher. And I will keep working at being more loving no matter what he does. That's pretty commendable. You say, it would help considerably, though, if I could make him aware of some things he does that interfere with my loving him. So far, kid, you're saying this very well. If you want a loving relationship, you can only control your part. If you try to control him, you'll make it impossible for him to be loving. And more importantly, you won't be loving. But you do get to ask for some things that would help you to be more loving, or that would absolutely make it impossible for you to love him. For example, if he were beating you physically, you would be wise, to say the least, to tell him that being hit in the face is more than you can handle as you're trying to learn to be a partner. That one's pretty obvious. That one's easy. To tell your partner, yeah, I don't do as well as a partner when you're hitting me in the face. We got that one. Let's try another one. If he drinks too much, that makes it way harder for you to be a loving partner. you can ask, but only ask, that he limit or eliminate his drinking. Like, he either stops it or he drinks only on certain days. I know a woman who said to her alcoholic husband, he's clearly an alcoholic, you can drink absolutely all you want to on Friday night, but the other days, not really, because you're completely absent from me, for the kids. And of course, he did what every alcoholic does. I mean, all of them. Well, I don't drink that much. All of us addicts say that. And when she says, well, you're just not present, I'm here. Addicts don't listen to anything that would interfere with their use of their addictive substance or behavior, because that's how they get rid of their pain. What you're essentially telling them to do is live with your pain without relief. That's not going to happen. But the spouse of an alcoholic can request that the drinking be limited or eliminated. It's actually easier to eliminate it. If he continues, you have a choice to make. In your own head, do you want to be in a relationship where your partner is intentionally and intermittently simply not there? Do you want to be in a relationship where your partner's absent? Because I promise you that if your partner's drinking and completely gone during the times that he's supposedly sober from alcohol, he's not present then either. Because he's in pain and he's treating his pain in other ways, by being distant, by vanishing, whatever. We get to ask our partners to change some behaviors that would help us be more loving, but not control. So what's the difference? Because this matters. So slow it up as this answer happens. The first time, or possibly 2 times, that we ask, it could be asking if we're not harsh or angry. But after 2 times of asking, we do have an expectation and we're controlling. We are. After the first 2 times, they know what you want. So now you have to decide what you're going to do with a partner who is clearly saying, we can be so stupid. We go, well, but I've asked him 10 times and he's told me that he's going to drink less. If you've asked him 10 times, honey, pay attention, perk up your ears. He's saying, no, I won't. I won't stop drinking. That's what he's saying. It doesn't matter what his words are. I can tell you with my words that I can flap my wings and fly, but that doesn't make it so. You continue. Let me give you an example of something that is difficult for me. Good. We'll be talking, he and I, and he just zones out. When we're together during a conversation, he just stops listening, like a switch. Often, that isn't obvious until I ask a question and he doesn't respond at all. When I repeat the question, he doesn't know what I've been saying for the past few minutes. It's obvious because he doesn't even know what I've been talking about. He's missed the content for the previous 5 minutes. He wasn't there, even though he was sitting right next to me. I am amazed that he can literally just stop listening and zone out when we talk. I'm not amazed. We escape our pain in such a variety of ways. Drinking, walking out of the room, just sitting in the room and just blanking out our mind. He learned to do this as a kid. I promise you he did. It's not just you. If you pay close attention, I'm willing to bet that you can tell when he zones out. It's earlier than when he can't answer your question. I'm suspecting that if you look at him closely, you'd know, but you don't look at him closely because you don't want to see him zone out and because you're busy talking. Did you hear that? So it's a given that he zones out. I'm not arguing with that. He zones out. But you're making at least a couple of mistakes here. You're too busy talking and not paying attention to whether he's listening, and you're not looking at him closely to see if he's involved. He's actually trying to tell you something. I'm not really interested in this subject, or I'm in pain, or I'm tired, or whatever. You're not watching him, which means you're not listening to him either. Do you get it? You're speaking with words. He's speaking with his behavior. Neither of you is listening to the other. Who's the most wrong? boring question. Who cares? Neither of you is listening. I'm also suspecting strongly that you don't look at him while you're talking, that you just talk. Part of it is because I've watched too many people do this, and part of it is because I've watched you talk to him, and you're not looking at him. Many people have conversations side by side, sitting in chairs, doing whatever, watching TV, looking out the window, rather than look at each other. And yeah, you really need to address this, because not listening, gosh, we've talked about this at least a couple of times in this chat, is a powerful sign of I don't care about you. And boy, once that message gets across, there's no listening, not from either side. And that would get in the way of your early efforts to be more loving. I promise you, he doesn't know he's doing it when he zones out. His protection just kicks in, just like the alcoholic who says, I didn't drink that much. He really believes that. He doesn't know he's zoning out. You say, obviously, this triggers my lifetime of pain of not feeling cared for or important enough to be listened to. But I also find it unloving of him and frustrating. So what's the point of me talking to him if he's not going to listen? So what's the reason and how do I resolve it, as it happens quite frequently? Despite my gently explaining how it feels and lovingly asking him to listen and be engaged when we talk, he has also said he doesn't know why he does it, and said it would be good to ask you. You know, all the whys don't matter. Not really. I can say, though, that almost certainly nobody intently listened to him as a kid. So he doesn't know how to have engaged conversations. But you could waste a lifetime on the why. Now it's all about doing something about it. Surely you can tell when he zones out. I find it difficult to believe that he does that. If his eyes are meeting yours, that would be one way to know that he's listening. You say, I can't always tell when he zones out, as we often lie together and talk with our cheeks touching, or we're looking at the garden while we talk or something, as I suspected exactly. When you're even lying together like this, or when you're looking out at the garden, you're not looking at each other. Practice doing that. Suggest to him that neither of you speaks without the other looking into your eyes. When I'm busy typing or on the phone or whatever, and Donna walks into the room, I stop what I'm doing. I tell the person I'm talking to, psst, pause. Gee, we talked about this earlier. Pause. And I look at her and I say, do you need anything from me? If nobody's in the room and she speaks, I stop looking at the garden or the movie or the whatever and look into her eyes so she knows I'm listening. It works. You say, I guess I just have to practice not getting frustrated or offended when he does. No. You say that's the hardest part because it feels so rude, like when you picked up his phone in the middle of our reading the marriage book together and downloaded an app. Baby, he doesn't know he's doing it. And you're right. He's not listening. But you aren't either. So I'm giving you some tips about how to make listening possible. No distractions. No looking at the garden. Never interrupt a connection between you. Not looking elsewhere, not downloading apps, not anything. As I said earlier, no task or fact or anything is as important as your partner. By that I mean your life partner, your conversational partner, your whatever. You keep that rule, you're not even going to believe how much your relationships change and how much happier you are. It works. Find out what happens when you add love to anything. We'll see you next week.